Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Work Should Feel Good, the show where your career growth meets your real life. I'm your host, Diana Alt, and today my guest, Eric Nehrlich, and I are going to discuss how embracing your personal agency can help you reduce your burnout and lead you to a life that you love as a leader with more impact. Eric is an executive coach who draws on his experience in tech to help leaders increase their impact. He loves challenging mindsets and habits that hold people back from the next level. Before becoming a coach, Eric served as an engineer and a product manager. After my own heart, I had those roles too in startups before joining Google, where he worked his way up to chief of staff of a little tiny business unit known as Google Search Ads. Eric is the author of You Have a Choice Beyond Hard Work to Meaningful Impact, which he wrote to share the mindsets and principles he uses as a coach with a broader audience. Welcome to the party, Eric. How are you?
Thanks, Diana. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here, and yeah, work
I'm
should feel
excited
good.
to
Let's make that happen.
I'm excited to nerd out with you. Which I was telling Eric before I smashed the record button that I consider him a high priority guest ever since I saw the front of his book. We were in like some sort of coaching cohort with Angie Callan, or networking something, and I saw your book and I was like, I must know this person because you talk about agency in your life and in your career, and I think a lot of people are sorely missing that. So we're going to get to that. But first, I want to hit on something from the Wayback Machine that you might not even realize I know. I do recon, aka read your whole LinkedIn profile. You were at MIT and Stanford. You were in the chamber chorale while studying physics. Many people do not think those things go together. So I'm interested in a little bit more about like your involvement in music and how you feel like that has helped you in any aspects of your career.
Well, that's not a question I've heard before.
Welcome to the show. I told you I don't ask the same 8 questions. So
I love it. So yeah, choral singing. So my mom was Korean. So like every other Korean child, I was started on, you get to choose between violin, piano. So I played violin from age 3.
Okay.
And so I was in the orchestra all the way through middle school into high school. And we had a problem my junior year where the orchestra conflicted with the AP English class.
Oh,
so
that's brutal.
Being a Korean mom, you choose the academics, of course. But being a Korean mom, it's like, you can't not have music.
Right.
So she's like, you're going to do chorus. I'm like, I've never done singing in my life.
Oh, that's so funny.
But it fit into my schedule around all the AP classes. So I started singing in the chorus, and it turned out I loved it. In fact, I loved it a lot more than the violin. So I ended up singing in choruses for over 20 years. So chamber chorus at MIT and at Stanford. And after I left Stanford, I actually joined the San Francisco Symphony Chorus for 6 years. So
how fun.
Yeah, it's been a big part of my life.
Yeah, I thought about doing that. So I grew up with teachers in my house that were musicians. My dad, like, basically he was like a clarinet player through college. He was in the band in college. And my mom did all the things from the time she was tiny. She is 82 years old and she still plays the piano for the teeny tiny church choir in our small town. And I also went to engineering school and also was in music while I was there. I did the actual madrigal singers when I was in college. But when I was in high school, I was in the concert choir, and I also did the show choir, glee club, whatever you call it. So I love it. And I see so many people that so often when I meet somebody that's really compelling or that I'm very drawn to that works in anything in STEM, I find out that they had either a music or an art background. So I figured.
Yeah. And you had asked about like, how does it relate to the rest of this? How does it relate to physics? I mean, there is a technical component to music. Like, it requires precision. It requires attention to detail.
There's math.
And it requires connection. Like, it's kind of like you do need that right brain connection. You need to work with other people, and you need to. What I love about choral singing in particular is, like, it's not about you as an individual. It's about how do you fit with a larger group. So like funny story. Like when I was auditioning for the Stanford Chamber Chorus, I made it to the callbacks, and the conductor had to start singing in different groups together, like different sets of 2 and 3, to see
Yeah.
how we sounded together, not just individual voices, but as units. And at one point, he was like, "Hey guys, check this out." He had me sing with one person, and he had me sing with a different person. And he was like, "Did everybody notice how Eric's voice changed to
Ooh,
blend
you're a
in with the other
blender.
person?" I'm a blender.
You
And
are a
he's like,
blender.
yeah. So he was like, yeah, Eric is listens to what's next to him and blends into it. And you need people like that in the chorus. You can't have all the strong voices because they don't mesh. But if you put a blender between them, it creates a
Yeah.
more consistent sound. And
Well,
I
and
was like,
when I did a lot of solo work too,
mm-hmm,
whenever I was singing, and I was always I was mostly a soprano. There was like one random year I sang alto and show choir because I tried out and I had the range for it. And they're like,
mm-hmm,
we don't have a soprano slot. Do you want to be an alto? And at first I was pissed, but then I did it. So it
mm-hmm.
was good. But I sang solos, but I also had the ability to blend in. And there was a gal that I'm thinking of in our choir that definitely was not. And she and I made the all-state choir,
Mm-hmm.
but you could hear her, you could pick her out of our, chorus of 75 people or however many people were in that, which is not that's not ideal
Yeah.
in a choir. So, well, thanks for walking down the memory lane. Did they have
Yeah.
the pirate certificate when you were at MIT? Do you know
The
about the
pirate,
pirate
that
certificate? Oh my
doesn't
gosh, you
sound
have to look
familiar.
this up. You can take, like, archery. I don't know, there's,
Oh,
like, 2 or 3 things that you can take. Yeah.
pistol, archery, and sailing. Yes.
Yeah. My best friend's daughter I went to school at Missouri University of Science and Technology. It used to be called the University of Missouri-Rolla, and my best friend's daughter went there too, and she decided when she was young that she wanted to go there, and I'm like, "You have to go there," jokingly, like, "You have to go
Mm-hmm.
there unless you get into MIT, and then you can go get the pirate certificate." So,
Yeah, I just
what
looked it
drew
up. It became available in the fall of 2011, so 20 years after I got to
20 years
MIT. So
after, okay, well,
I was a little
I feel
early
like
to the
you should
party.
be able to go back and get that, there should be an endorsement. Um, what you started out as a physicist, which also caught
Hmm.
my attention. My dad had a bachelor's and a master's degree in physics, and he
Hmm.
ended up teaching at the junior college level,
Hmm.
all the pre-engineering stuff. What drew you to physics?
I wanted to be Richard Feynman when I grew up. So Richard
Oh,
Feynman was a famous physicist. He worked on the nuclear bomb, the Manhattan Project. He was a Caltech professor. He wrote the definitive set of lectures on physics. But he mostly was just really fun. He wrote a book called
yeah.
Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, and he lives like playing samba music in Brazil and like doing physics in Japan. And he was just like wandering the world solving problems. I'm like, that sounds like an amazing life. I want to
It
be
does
like that.
sound like
That
an
sounds
amazing
cool.
life. I didn't like physics that much. I liked chemistry a lot better. So,
Mhm.
so
I didn't like physics that much either, but I was good enough at it to get into MIT and then Stanford, um, and so I was like, yeah, I was like, this is great. I'm gonna do this. And then around once I was in grad school in my PhD program, I realized like, yeah, I don't love this enough to do this all the time, and that turns out to
yeah,
be a real problem if you're in grad school because that's what
yeah,
you're
you
supposed to
don't
do
wanna
all the
the
time.
I know people that finish the doctorate not because they like the subject, and not even like some people are just like, "I want the doctorate." Like, I might do
Hmm.
something else. I think that's just my brother has a doctorate he has a PhD in electrical engineering, and I cannot imagine anything worse than spending that much time, in school for something that you didn't really love. So, I'm glad you found your way to something cooler. So, you went from physics and then you kinda wandered your way, well, maybe not wandered, it looked pretty direct when I was looking at your LinkedIn. You went into the software engineering space.
Hmm.
So, talk to me a little bit about your journey from baby software engineer through this chief of staff place that you ended up. Because
Yeah.
that's
No,
not a
because what?
path people are used to seeing. So, tell me a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
Sure, happy to. So yeah, I started off as a software engineer, mostly because I was dropping out of grad school and I knew how to program computers, so I programmed computers. That's what you did back
Yeah,
then.
yeah,
um, and I was happy doing that. Again, turns out I was good at it, but didn't really love it, which turns out to be important later.
yes.
Um, but at my second job, I was at a really cool biotech startup. We were doing really cool technical work, stuff nobody else in the world could do. Really talented people. I was very excited by what we were up to. Um, and then the company went bankrupt because the leadership was terrible. And I was like, wait a second. We're doing great technical work. We're exceeding all our goals. We're doing stuff nobody else can do. What happened? I don't understand. Like, how
And
could
thus
all this
an
work be
executive
wasted?
coach was born. So
And that was my origin story as executive coach. It's
yeah,
like, man, it doesn't matter how good your team is if the leadership is terrible, because the leadership can just nuke it all by being terrible. And
yes.
that was like, oh, yeah, I want to understand this better. So those that are watching on video can see the bookshelf behind me. That's why I started reading all these business and strategy and leadership books, because I'm like, what the hell happened here? I
Yeah.
don't understand. Um, and so yeah, I was still doing software engineer at this point. I at some point became a product manager, um, and then decided to try to pivot into management and business, because it was like that's the leverage point that I saw available to me.
Yeah. And
Um,
I
I
think
was
that's even more true now because I was a product manager for a long time.
hmm
Can you see all the reasons why I wanted to talk to you? I was a product
hmm
manager for a long time, and the thing that has happened, and it's accelerated even more in the last 5 years, is that product management, when I was trained, was about understanding how to solve a market problem. And now
hmm
people think it's about the product, which I think is dull. I think the market
yeah.
problems were interesting. I think the what does this product do? I always say that if your product manager knows the most about your product, you have a bad product manager or a bad product management culture. So,
hmm
what are some of the books? What are a couple of the books that you read back then that made you really start to think? Some of your favorites.
Oh gosh. I don't know. I that's too hard a question to spring on me
Okay,
without giving me time to do research. It's um yeah, well, I can think of one that just kind of just as a funny story, like
sure.
Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Underrated.
Well, and the funny part is I had read that book when I was a teenager because everybody said this is a great book. And
They
as a
gave it out to high
teenager,
school. It was like a book you got for high school graduation in the
yeah.
era when we were getting out of school. Yeah.
So I read it in high school and I'm like, this is the dumbest, fakest book I've ever read. This is junk. This is like used car salesman tactics. I hate this. This is useless. I then later read it 20 years later in my 30s, 10 years into my career. And I'm like, I just spent the last 20 years figuring out all the stuff in this book.
Yep.
Darn it.
Yep. I haven't read it probably since my 30s, like my early 30s, and that's 20 almost 20 years ago for me, so I'm probably due for a reread on that one. But that one
Yeah.
definitely holds up in my opinion because no matter what you're doing, like your point of how can you have brilliant technology and still lose the company, how can
hmm
you be a brilliant technologist and not progress in your career is the corollary to, like, that question, so,
Yeah.
very
I
cool.
guess
So
one other one, if you want to really geek out, is I read a bunch of this French philosopher named Bruno Latour, who studies how does science get made. So he was doing the social science of studying scientists,
stop.
and
That's so meta.
it is so meta. And I
I
was
love it.
like, as somebody that had been a physicist and been on the inside and saw people making these decisions, it's like the story is, the myth is, like, the brave scientist goes into the lab, creates the experiment, and changes the world. And this guy was like saying, it's like, but most of what scientists do is go to meetings and talk to each other and arrange for and like go get funding. And it's like, where's the science actually? Is it happening in the laboratory? But you need funding and you need these meetings and you need these collaborations. And it's like all this
How
other stuff
interesting.
is part of this as well. So it's like the science is the output, but the process of science is much more complex and part of this ecosystem. And I was like, oh, that's interesting because I'd seen it as a working physicist.
Yeah.
Like that's how it works. And it was actually part of what dissuaded me from sticking in physics because I watched my professor. Literally, this is a funny story. I had my professor would sneak into the lab late at night, 7 or 8 p.m.,
So he
to
could
do some
finally
real
do some
physics thing.
science.
Yes,
Yeah.
because they'd spend all day in meetings. I'm like, wait, So I'm going to work
Yeah.
for 7 years to get a PhD, another couple of years of postdocs, try to go get tenure. So 20 years down the road, I can sit in meetings all day and never do the physics. Like, this doesn't
Right.
seem like a good deal.
Well, so you can pay like $15 an hour to the master's student to do your physics for you. There's a whole lot of that
Exactly.
going on. So
Sure.
I didn't like the lab. Like I would have been a terrible research scientist. And there was a point in time where I thought I wanted to get a PhD. And then I
Mm.
started, making friends with people a few years older than me. I'm like, oh, that looks terrible.
Oh,
Terrible.
I actually
So
loved the lab. Like, it turns out I like the experiment and technology part. So, like, how do we get this stuff
yeah.
to work? How do we jury rig something together? How do we write the software? Like, that part I loved. It turns out that's not actually physics. That's just, being a technologist.
Mhm.
So that was the other thing I learned over time.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, yeah. So Bruno Latour, if you want to really geek out about what it means to be a scientist and how we work together as in social domains, like he's an interesting character.
Okay. I'm so writing that down. I'm gonna try to find it. Maybe I can put it in the show notes. Because show notes are important, guys. You should read the cool stuff. You should click our links. It's a very big deal. Um, so you decided to go into the business management side of it. When
Mhm.
did you make that shift, and what was your first kind of role that you had in that
So
realm?
it was two things happened. Well, I guess the big shift was there was a famous engineering blogger, a guy named Joel Spolsky, Joel on Software, who was running a software startup in New York, and he was looking for management interns. He's like,
Okay.
I don't want MBAs. I want real people who know how to program computers. And I will mold them into becoming the managers I want.
Nice.
And I'm like, great. That's what I want to do. I want to go from I want to go from software to management. This guy wants that. So I went to go work for him. And as part of that, there was a program at Columbia University that was specifically designed
Oh,
for people
cool.
going from technology to business. So it's called the Master's Degree in Technology Management, but it's basically an MBA targeted at tech people 10 years into their career.
That's a
So it's like,
really that's
technology, we're going to teach you the MBA speak so that you can go navigate executive level
yeah.
stuff.
And I saw on your LinkedIn, did you go immediately after that degree into your finance? Because you had a finance role at
Yes.
Google. That was your first Google job, right? Was the
That was my
finance,
first. Yeah.
How was that?
So
Was that a hard pivot to make? Because I don't see very many people, and maybe it's just because there's not a lot of people taking advantage of a program like the one at Columbia, but you don't see a
no,
whole lot of that. So,
it's very unusual. If you had asked me a month before before I started interviewing for the job, I would have like, no, I'm not a finance person. I would never go into finance.
yeah.
But one of my professors at the Columbia program hammered into our heads that if you want to understand how executives think, you have to understand the money. And I was like, I don't understand the money. And I realized
That's
that
to
was the
learn it.
missing piece that I didn't understand when the company went bankrupt. I didn't understand the money. So that
Yeah.
professor made us read P&L statements. He made us read, earnings reports, and it really hammered home like I got to understand the money better.
Are you familiar? Have you
So,
ever heard of the book Financial Intelligence?
uh, I sounds familiar. I don't think I've read it.
It's like a finance book for non-finance people. I've
Hmm.
given it to a couple of executive coaching clients who are like, I'm hitting the level where I have to be able to talk about this. It's for the exact same reason that you went to work in the
Yeah,
financial analyst role, but it could be a good one for you to check out for your people. So
yeah. I'll look it up. But yeah, so a few months later, when I graduated from the program, I started looking for a job. This opportunity came across my thing to become a revenue forecasting analyst at Google. And I'm like, Google's cool. I always wanted to work at Google. And I bet you if I'm the one forecasting and analyze the revenue, I'll really understand the
you're
money.
gonna figure out the money. Yeah.
And so I talked my way into the role. I wasn't like they were looking for an MBA, and like instead they got this weird background person, but the manager liked me, so he hired me. And boy, was my professor right. Because 6 months after I started that job, I'm standing in front of Eric Schmidt and Larry and Sergey and the CFO talking about revenue, and they're like, what's going to happen with revenue? And you're the expert here. And like the entire leadership team of Google is looking at me to tell them what to do because I understood the money. I was like, well, holy, don't want to swear too much on your podcast, but yeah, it was a definite shock to the system. And yeah, because of that, I would do all the top people running the ads programs, and that eventually led to becoming the chief of staff for the search ads team because I knew their money, I knew the business model, I knew the revenue streams inside and out, and they're like, come help us help us run the business.
Did you find you had a natural, like, how hard was it for you to get to the point where you really felt like you grokked the money, where you could stand up in that room with the big dogs?
I mean, the funny thing was nobody actually had looked at the money that carefully up until that point. Like the guy that hired me, a guy named Shane Antos, had started this revenue team just a year or two before. Because before, like nobody at Google had ever cared about money because money was literally falling from the sky. Like billions of dollars were just appearing in
Yeah,
the bank account. So you don't need to track it. It just
right.
appears. There's no, it's like, yeah, there's a waterfall. Why would you like track
Thanks
the
for the
waterfall?
money.
Because
Great.
yeah. But he was like, maybe we should understand exactly what affects our revenue and how this works. So like I was among the first people he hired, and so like just the fact that I was looking at it on a daily basis put me way ahead of everybody else at the company. Um, and so
Oh,
yeah.
you don't have to be the expert. I remember very distinctly, I was working as a product manager at a company, and they had it was a small company that had been bought by EMC, and then they shoved us
Mhm.
in RSA because they kind of didn't know what to do with us. But we were governance, risk, and compliance, and they're like, risk, security, yeah, let's do that. And I remember at one point getting told I needed to take over the product offering for our hosting solution, which is like the precursor to traditional SaaS. And I knew nothing. I
Mhm.
had to go learn IT operations. And my director of product just said, look, all you have to do is show that you can learn this, and the ops people will tell you everything because they're just happy to be asked.
Yeah.
So you don't have to know it all. If you know more than the other people in the room, you're the expert. So
Mhm.
there you go. And it
Well,
was an interesting experience.
and to the earlier comments about being a blender. So we had these PhD quantitative analysts on our team, like people that actually understood the numbers to a
Right,
level of modeling that were beyond what I cared to do. Um, but they couldn't speak executive. And
right.
so in these meetings with the ads VPs and the CFO, they would ask a question, the quants would say something, and nobody would understand them. I'm like, so what they're trying to say is ba 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 ba.
Right.
And so I was the translator between the quants and the VPs. And the quants liked it because I had enough background. I had the physics background. Like I could actually understand what they said legitimately and
Yes.
speak for them in a way that was simpler, but not misleading. So they liked like, okay, this guy's actually saying the right things. And the VPs liked it
You've
because I could
basically
actually
been a
speak their language.
translator. You've always been
Yeah,
a translator. That's
I've
really,
always been
yeah,
a
I do that
translator.
too. I think that there's so many people that are like that. Like I work, my client base is, it's mostly people that have sat at that intersection of business and technology, which can happen in
Hmm.
multiple different ways. I've worked with tons of product managers because I was in that space, and then project managers, that kind of people. And then
Hmm.
like engineering leaders that are trying to figure out like, oh, I need to be able to talk about more than like how many tickets are in Jira now. And
Hmm.
it's such a wild space to inhabit because when
Hmm.
you've never had to know anything about business, and
Hmm.
then suddenly you have to know something about business, you need that WD-40. So that's the
Yeah.
role that you're playing. Very cool. And so you you wandered your way, I say that flippantly, I know you worked hard for it, but into this chief of staff role. And chief of staff roles are really interesting because in some places they can be almost like a senior executive assistant, which clearly is not what you were doing when you were running like what was $100 million business unit? Um, or for Google search. So talk to me about what life looked like for you as a big company chief of staff.
Yeah. So when I became chief of staff, it was still a relatively new role in the corporate world. And like it didn't. I didn't have a job, I basically didn't have a job description. I was burned out. I was looking for a new role. The ads VP learned of this and said, "Hey, want to come be my chief of staff?" I'm like, "What's a chief of staff?" He's like, "I don't know. You know my business. Come help me run the business." I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I'm burned out anyway. Let me try something new. So that's kind of how it happened.
Nice.
Excuse me. I'm getting over a cold here. Yeah. So what was it like? I mean, it's a kind of a grab bag of a role. You really can't define it. I tell potential chiefs of staff, like yeah, like you said, it could be an executive assistant. It could be the number 2 chief operating officer of a whole org and everything in between.
Yeah.
So for people considering the role, if you need to ask, what does success look like in this role?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm doing a good job, what do you expect me to be doing? And some people say like organize my calendar. Like, oh yeah, no, not that. And some people are like, I want you to take over like this whole operational segment and make it work. So I was kind of a hybrid of that. I was in some sense a force multiplier for my VP, where there was stuff he didn't have time to look at, and my job was to go look at what's going on and figure it out. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
and come back with a recommendation.
How well did you
So
understand that business? About like, did you walk in there with an understanding of the ads business, or were you teaching yourself that business at the same time that you were ramping up on this role?
well, that's what the 3 years as the revenue analyst had done. Like I knew
Okay,
that
you
business
learned that.
inside and out. I knew the
Right.
revenue better than anybody in the org. Like I knew it better than
Okay.
the execs because I'd been the one on the finance side analyzing it. Um, and I had all this, interest in leadership and organizational theory and stuff like that under my belt as well. So it was a role where I really got to have a lot of freedom to explore what I wanted.
What are
Um,
you proudest of doing? Like, what are you proudest of achieving in that chief of staff role, that last role you had at Google?
you know, um, it's funny because like the chief of staff role, it's really hard to measure your impact because the real impact is helping the org work more effectively.
Mhm.
And it's kind of hard to measure. Like I believe the org was, I don't know, a couple percent more effective as a result of me being there. But if you take a couple percent over a couple thousand people, like that's a big impact.
It's a lot.
Um, but what I'll say is when I joined as chief of staff, the search ads business was heading towards a math problem where we'd hit complete saturation on the desktop side. We'd hit complete saturation of most developed countries. And that meant growth was going to start dying in 2016.
Yeah.
And this was like 2011 or I guess 2012 when I was like pointing this out. I was like hammering the table, like, this is our destiny unless we change something drastic here.
Mhm.
And my hammer horses were like, we got to do mobile, and we got to get into emerging countries. And 4 years later, we did not hit that cliff because they did a lot of work on mobile in emerging countries. And like, is that all due to me? No, everybody saw it, but I was definitely one of the people pounding the table, doing the analysis, making sure it came up in every meeting so that it was on the top of people's mind to make sure we paid attention to it.
Nice.
And so I believe I had
That's
an
a big deal.
impact with
That
us
would have
navigating
like
that.
that might not have killed Google if they hadn't done it, but Google would not be the Google that we've known the last several years if that had not
Yeah.
happened, if they hadn't got the
And there
program.
and there were, like I said, there were a lot of people working on mobile within Google. It's not like I'm the single-handed savior here, but like for my role as analyst and chief of staff, I made sure we kept attention on it, and I think that does have an impact.
I remember when Facebook went public, which was like
Mm-hmm.
2010, 2011, something like that. And they
Mm-hmm.
had a mobile app. The way I look at it is like there's being on mobile and then there's monetizing on mobile and
Yeah.
building an actual business that works with mobile. And I remember I bought in the IPO because I was like,
Mm.
I use this product. I have some money. Let's do it. I have not
Mm-hmm.
been sad about that investment, but it was really interesting because people are like, "There's no way they're gonna die. They'll never figure out making money." And I'm like, Mark Zuckerberg is gonna figure out how to make money on mobile. It's gonna happen. So talk to
Well, I mean, as somebody that lived through that time, like, we'd seen Friendster, we'd seen MySpace, we'd seen a bunch of companies die. So it was like, I was cynical because I was like, yeah, this will just die. This be another fad, just like these other ones. And boy, was I wrong about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I basically had enough. I had an amount of money that me and my financial advisor decided we could play with. And but it was interesting, and it got me interested in the business side of these large tech companies, because I'd always been touching business, but I didn't work at any FANGs like you did. I live in the Midwest. We had limited opportunity for that. So
yeah.
now you're so much of what you're doing now, as a coach, as an author, is rooted in your burnout story, which happened while you were at Google. So can you talk us a little bit through how long were you burned out before you really knew that you were burned out? What did that evolution look like? And how did you manage to shift? Because so many people feel like they have to leave the org. They're like, I can't do it. I'm burnt out. I must leave my company. And it sounds like you didn't do that. So
I
help
did
us
not do
understand.
that. Yeah. So I already mentioned this. So like 6 months after I started at Google, I'm like in these meetings with the Google leadership team, and I'm feeling like I'm so important. I'm so valuable. Like it's pretty cool. It was really good for my
Yeah.
ego.
Yeah.
And the fact that I was working like 100-hour weeks, like 8 a.m. to midnight every day, most weekends. Like I remember that first year, I worked a full day every holiday, I think I think maybe I took off Thanksgiving Day. And it was just like, I was
That's a
working
lot.
nonstop, but it was like ego gratifying. Like people were paying attention. They were listening to what I had to say. Like the I was having an impact. Like the leaders of Google were listening to me. And that was something I had not had much of in my career, where people listened to me. So I was like, yeah, this is great. I'm willing to work this hard because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I mean, it's freaking Google. So, so yeah, that was great. And so 1 year, 2 years pass, and then I made a mistake. And the mistake was I was offered a bigger role,
Oof.
and I took it. And the bigger role was running finance for emerging products. So things like Google Wallet, Google Shopping,
Mhm.
books, offers, things like that, and bunch of stuff. And I was going to be running a team for the first time. And the critical part for your show, Work Should Feel Good, my weakness had always been in operations and process and details. Like that was just not what I was good. I'm good at big picture strategy thinking, like where should we go, vision,
You can
direction.
you can have a vision, you can synthesize like crazy information from multiple sources, but please don't make me
The
write an
nitty,
SOP.
yeah, the nitty gritty of getting it all done, not my strength. So, me being the arrogant young man I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to make that my job. Because if I make it my job, I'll have to get better at it.
It worked.
So,
See, it worked when you walked into finance, so it makes sense how you got there mentally.
yeah. So that's what I did. I became a finance manager of a team that was doing process and operations. We were managing headcount. We were managing budget. We were managing all these profit and loss statements, like the financial reporting. And that was really hard. I was really not good at it. And so I'm working really hard on something I'm not good at that drains me every day. And after a year and a half of doing that, then my body just collapsed. It was just like, yeah, this is not, because working 100 hours on something a week on something that was exciting and active, energizing for me, I was able to keep that
You
pace.
can do that. You can do that in your
Working
20s
100
and
hours a
30s.
week on something draining that was I'm bad at, that was just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because so much of what the conversation is around workplace engagement and being happy at work and all of that, the people automatically go to this trite, well, people don't leave, but they don't leave companies, they leave bosses. It's all about the
Mm,
bad boss. And that's like kind of true, but it usually comes up number 2
mm,
on lists. And the number 1 ends up being, and it's fairly close, but on all the surveys that I've seen about this, number 1 ends up being, I can't grow in the direction that I want to grow.
mm,
So you grew and you were in this thing, but I created a model that I call my aligned career cornerstones. And leader
mhm,
is one of them, but the most important one is the right work. So if you're doing work that makes you want to stab yourself in the eye with a fork all day, I don't care
Yeah.
how good you're getting paid. I don't care how great your boss is. Eventually it's going to fall apart. So how did that did you end up on medical leave? I mean, I don't want to get too nosy, but were you in the mode of like, my gosh, I have to take FMLA and be off for a few months, or how did
No,
that
it didn't
show
get
up for
that
you?
it didn't get that bad, but for me, the way it showed up was I'd been pushing hard. It was Q4. We're doing all the financial planning for the next year. Got to get everything. Every resource ask has to be tied out across 15 spreadsheets and synchronized
Yeah,
exactly. And I'm double checking and triple checking everything. And I'm like, in my brain, I'm like, this sucks, but I just have to make it to Christmas. This sucks, but I just have to
yeah,
make it to Christmas.
yep.
So I make it to Christmas. I'm looking forward. I'm going to spend some time with my family. And I wake up Christmas morning with 103-degree fever, and my body's just collapsed. Like I basically didn't get out
Yeah.
of bed for a week. I was just like, my
Oh,
body's like, you
no.
told us to make it to Christmas. We got you there. Now you're paying.
I had that, not to that severe of a degree, but I worked, for Cerner, which is now part of Oracle Healthcare IT, when I was early in my career, and I was doing a lot of cool stuff. Like I was, an engineer and then a business analyst. I eventually went into sales operations, and I noticed after about 3 years that every single time I took a vacation, I ended up getting sick. So I'd take a
Hmm.
week vacation and be gone for 3 extra days because halfway through vacation I ended up sick. And it
Yeah.
wasn't like cough, cough. It was like, I'm catatonic. I can't do it. And it took me a while because I was young and dumb to realize that my body was like valiantly fighting off illness all the time. And when I
Hmm.
took a break, it's like, oh, okay. Well, we have a break now. So we can take care of this. We can alert the
Yeah.
immune system. And that's when I finally started making some shifts and eventually left about a year and a half after that. So it's rough though, but
Yeah.
I have worked with, I'm sure you have too. I've worked with multiple people that their sign of burnout is that they ended up in the hospital, or that
Yeah.
they ended up having to actually take medical leave because they completely collapsed. So
Yeah.
what'd you
It's
do like after that week? How long did it take you
yeah.
to go from, "Oh my gosh, I lost my whole week of Christmas," to, "I'm gonna make substantive change at work"? Did you go right back in the new year and say, "I can't do this anymore," or did it take some time?
So to your point about the realization, like part of it was in the year leading up to that, I'd never seen my friends. They're like, you're a
Yeah,
workaholic. You're working all the time. And I'm like, I'm not a workaholic. They're like,
you're a workaholic. You know who says
like,
that? Workaholics.
but I mean, the funny thing is like, that was what was so weird to me. Like, I'd never been a workaholic in my life. I'd never worked late in my life. It had never been
Oh,
a thing for me. Like,
okay.
because I was like, I would be going to play volleyball or I'd be going to the chorus. Like, I had stuff to do in the evenings and I would go do other things. Like, I had a full, well
Yeah,
rounded life until I got to Google. And then I just took over my life because, like, oh, it's temporary. And then 3 years later, it was not temporary. It was just my new way
yeah.
of being. Um, so had been a bit of a wake up call. But to answer your question, like, it was during that week, I was like, wait, why am I doing
Why am I
this? Like,
doing
I haven't
this?
seen my friends. I have not seen my family. I'm not enjoying this. It kind of sucks. And the
Yeah.
reason I'm doing it at the end of the day was like, I was told that's what it took to get a promotion. And I was like,
I
somewhere
don't
during
want
there, I
that
was like,
promotion. Like, we
what
kill
if?
ourselves for promotions we don't even want.
Yeah, I was like, what if that promotion wasn't like, if this is what it takes to get that promotion, maybe I don't want the promotion. And I was like, whoa, that's a concept that
What?
had never entered my head. Like, wait,
Yeah.
can I not want a promotion? Is that something you can do? Never occurred to me.
Yes.
It never even occurred to me. And that's why my book, you mentioned my book. My book is called You Have a Choice. That was the first time I was like, wait, I could choose not to work towards the promotion. Like, completely blew
Yes.
my mind that was even a choice to make. Because of course you have to get the promotion. Of course you
Yes.
have to do whatever your manager says. That was the first time I was like, maybe, maybe I don't. Maybe I can choose differently. So I come in after Christmas at my first one-on-one with my manager. I said, I'm not working that hard anymore. And they were like, what do you mean? Like, that was really bad. That was not good for me. Like, cannot work that hard anymore. They're like, well, if you can't work that hard, you're not meeting expectations. You're not going to get that promotion. I'm like, yeah, I get
Okay.
that. If
Yeah.
you're not going to work that, if you can't handle the work, I'm going to give it to somebody that can. Like, I guess that's what you got to do. So
If
she
I
took
can't
away,
handle being exploited by you, you will find someone else to exploit. Got it.
yeah. So they took away half my team, slashed my performance rating, and so there were consequences. People were like, oh, happy ending. You stood up for yourself. It's like, no, there were consequences to me taking that stand.
That's really
Uh,
important. Because in that consequences realm, so many people worry about the consequences. And when I talk to people, I don't tell me if you ever experienced this or if any of your clients have experienced it. I'll be talking through someone where they're like in a similar crossroads or they're just burned out and barely even acknowledging it. And I'll ask them, "Do you actually want this thing?"
mm-hmm,
And they can't fathom. They're in that "I'm supposed to want this"
mm-hmm,
mode. Or they're afraid, they're desperately afraid today in this current market, which is different than when
yeah,
you were
which is
going through
different.
this.
Yeah,
But they're desperately afraid that if they do not agree to ruin their health, they're going to get laid off. And I'm like, well, you're going to be in a hospital anyway. So
yeah.
it's difficult. So
It's
you
very
manage
difficult, but I want to say, like, that's where the choice lies.
comes.
We
Yes.
don't we don't have a choice until we are willing to accept consequences. If we don't think we can handle the consequences, we don't have a choice. Um, and that's that. So this is so critical to understanding this concept because one of my clients had a situation where, like, well, they had a toxic manager and they're like, this sucks. I have to go, like, but I have to do what she says. She's my boss. I'm like, well, there are options. There are other jobs in the world. And she's like, no, but this is the best job. Like, I just have to do it. I'm like, okay. And eventually she agreed to go, like, apply to a couple other jobs. And not surprising, because she was awesome, she got accepted. She got a proposal, an offer from another company. It was a really good offer. It had some of the stuff she'd been wanting for the promotion, the title, thing, more compensation. And she turned it down because
What?
she was like, well, because when she thought she had to do the job, her current
Oh,
job,
it was harder when she realized she didn't have options. I got you. That makes a lot of
yeah,
sense.
now
So,
now she had actual choice facing her. Like, I could go to this other company. It's got some advantages, the title and the compensation, but the work wasn't exciting. And she was like, actually, the chance I have at this company is worth putting up with my manager. I
mhm.
choose that. I'm going to choose
Yeah.
this situation instead of feeling like I'm stuck with it. And it completely changed her mindset overnight. Like, oh, I'm choosing this. I'm not stuck here. I'm choosing this. And that, to your point about agency, that's the essence of agency. It's saying, like,
Yes.
I choose these circumstances.
I think that I talk about choice a lot, and I love that example that you just gave. Another way it comes up in conversations that I have is people will claim that they wanna change. It's that, the whole saying that the pain of the change has to be less than the pain of staying the same, or you can't make the change, like that kind of thing.
Hmm.
When people are kinda right on that balancing edge, sometimes the point that I like to make is you do have a choice. You're choosing what you're in. Every day that you wake up and you go in and you do the same thing, you're choosing that. So
Yes.
if you hate it, you need to either choose it and mean it and stop bitching,
Hmm.
or more likely, like, try to actually have positive change, like, be a part of the change that you wanna see at the company, or you need to make a plan to get the fuck out. Like,
Yep.
sitting there miserable every day and torn is not a way to live because you have a choice and you're not acknowledging that you're making the choice. So,
Yeah. I'll say
um
two things there. I agree. I love it. I say a similar thing. Like, every time you show up to work, you're making a choice. You're saying it's worth it to keep this job,
mhm,
and I'll show up to work for it. Like, that's a choice. It's the default choice, but it's still a choice.
yeah.
And
I had
secondly, that oh, sorry, let me finish this
Go ahead.
thought.
No, continue.
The that pain, like, oh, the frustration and the pain and the anxiety, like, sometimes that is necessary to, as you said, build up the frustration so that it's worth making the change. Like,
Yes.
when you acknowledge and recognize and pay attention to the pain you are experiencing on a day-to-day basis, you're like, this sucks.
I would
I
actually rather
want a
people
change.
feel the pain because there's like humans are really good at like smashing emotions down and
Hmm.
not ignoring them until they and ignoring them until they explode. And I actually would rather people feel the pain because they might be
Yes.
able to make a change faster. So that's a really great point that you break up. So you wrote a book. Let's go to
Hmm.
that.
Sure.
Um the two I read the intro of the book and then I kind of picked and choose. So anybody listening to this, if you read it and you feel like Diana's full of shit and didn't read the book, it's because I didn't read the whole book. But I did read the intro, and there's two key principles that are at the very beginning in the intro that I think are incredibly powerful. So you want to tell people what they are? You know what I'm talking about. You wrote the book. I can help you if you need.
Well, the two principles. I mean, principle number one is how are you the problem? And that's the essence
Mm-hmm.
of agency. Like, what
Yeah.
are you doing to contribute to the situation? So my job sucks. My manager's miserable. They treat me like terribly. They make me do all this stuff. What are you? But how are you the problem? You keep showing up. You keep
I've
saying
heard this
yes. You keep
stated in a
doing it
really
all.
I've heard this stated in a really powerful way. I can't remember who did it, but I've heard it a few times. How are you complicit in creating the conditions that you claim that you don't want? Which
That's
is
a
a
Jerry
kick in the
Colonna.
teeth. Who is
Yeah,
it?
that's a Jerry Colonna question.
Okay, great.
Jerry
Jerry Colonna.
Jerry
I
Colonna is the CEO whisperer. He works at Reboot. Yeah, how are you complicit in the circumstances you say you don't want, in creating the
yeah,
circumstances you say you don't want? And I
I
was like,
like it because it's snarky. I should
it's
probably
circling.
follow that guy more, but it's like, what do you mean I'm creating? I didn't say you were bad, but the point of what can you do? So
Yeah, and he's very thoughtful about it because he says
yeah,
complicit.
he's not a
It's
dick.
like it's not saying like you're responsible. Like I'm not like I say you're the problem. He's like complicit. You're just like an accomplice. You're like in the background, kind of gently helping
You're
along,
in
but
the
you're not
back
this.
seat of the getaway car for the bank
Yeah,
robbery.
yeah,
So
you're not the criminal here. And I'm like, no, you're the criminal. Like, just
yeah,
own it.
for sure. So,
um,
how are you the
but
problem? What are some of the ways that people like when you have a client that's stuck and they're like they don't see that they're a problem? What are some of the common things that they're doing or like ways that you get them out of that?
yeah, I mean, so the reason I want to quickly say why is this important because the reason it's important is the only thing you have control of in a situation is your own behavior. You
Mhm.
can't change other people. You can't. You can't
Yeah.
change the past either.
Yep.
And the future, it's really kind of unpredictable.
Yeah.
So, like, one of the things I say in the intro is the only thing you really, really, really have control over is what do you do next? Your
Are
next
you a
action.
stoicism nerd by any chance?
No, I mean
Oh.
it's all the same stuff though.
It
Stoicism,
is all the
Buddhism,
same
it's the
stuff,
same
but I
principles.
like I'm very much into that. I lean some I don't it's part of who I am and I talk about it occasionally, but the whole control thing, I was raised by teachers, rule followers, like and I was always the black sheep of the family. I am still to this day. But I was raised in an environment where we were given the mistaken belief that we could control more than we can. It took me
Mm,
decades to beat that out of myself. So,
yeah.
and reading 2,000-year-old dead guys like is
Hmm.
one of the ways that I handled that. So, you can only control your next action. One of the things I liked in the book was that you focused on the next thing
Hmm.
because of the whole you can't change the past and you can't know what's going on in the future, just what you're gonna do. So
Yeah. So use an example, you said it was an example from a client. A very common one I literally just got off the phone with another client, uh, is like the people pleaser. Like I end up with all this work that's not valuable.
yeah,
What can I do?
stop saying
Stop
yes.
saying yes. Like it seems obvious from the outside, but if you've been wired your whole life, and by the way, if you're a woman or from certain cultures, like you are like heavily pressured
Wired.
to say yes,
Yes.
and conditioned to do this. But if you are wired, conditioned to do that, it's really hard to say no.
Mhm.
And you don't realize how often you say yes. So, like, one of the exercises I give my clients, talk about practically what can you do next. It's like, Never say yes in the moment. Instead,
Ooh,
say, I'm going to write that down. I'm going to check my other priorities and I'll get back to you later today. People are like, oh, that sounds reasonable. And because, like, in the moment, you're like, it's 15, 20, 30 minutes. I could do that.
I
But
can't
if
do
you make this
5
list,
extra of them in a day. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. If you make the list, my clients often find, like, oh my God, there's like 10 or 15 things on this list every day. And if each one takes 15 or 30 minutes, like, that's a full work. Like, I'm saying yes to a full work day of work every single
Yep.
day. No
That
wonder I
isn't
could never get ahead.
yeah. That isn't my responsibility, really. That's a really good one. Um, the other thing is, like, something I did because I was reaching a point in my career where that whole, like, what got you here won't get you there thing where you're trying to
Mhm,
have to discern. And I had a really great boss, when I was a product manager of way too many teams
mhm.
in reporting and analytics space, and not everybody understands reporting. Like, you can't just plop another product manager that doesn't grok data into this to help. So, it was a big struggle, and I finally just sat down and gave him a Post-it, and I said,
Mhm.
"I need you to write on the Post-it what I have to do,
Mhm.
what outcomes I have to achieve." And he did
Mhm.
it, and I started saying no to almost everything else, and boy, howdy, were people pissed.
Yeah.
They were not happy because suddenly they had to do their jobs. So, it did not make me popular, but it made my life better. So
Yeah, I had a similar moment when I was chief of staff. So, when I became chief of staff, like I said, there was no job description. It was like, "Just help
yeah,
run the org." And so people came and said, "Hey, can you do this?" And I would say, "Yes, I could do that, because I can do
sure.
lots of things. I'm pretty capable." And by the end of the first year, I was buried under all this useless work and
Yeah,
kind of miserable and hating life and ready to quit. Um, but I'd learned a little bit in my career at that point, and I was like, before I quit, maybe I could do this crazy thing and go talk to my manager.
what?
So I went to I went to my VP. I'm like, so I've been doing this chief of staff thing about a year now, and I think I'm doing okay. But I'm like, I'm doing all this kind of work, and there's some other like really cool, strategic, insightful work that I think I could be doing, but I don't have time for. He's like, I want you doing the strategic work. Like, get rid of that other
Mm,
stuff. Like,
yeah,
if
stop
somebody
doing
gives you
that.
trouble, stop doing that. Like, go find like if you need help finding somebody else to do it, I'll help you. So like
Yeah,
we pivoted my work to the stuff that was much more, first of all, much better suited for me. Because again,
yeah,
I'm not a process and operations guy. I'm a strategic big thinker guy. So
yeah,
we pivoted into stuff that I'm good at, I'm energized by. I became much more impactful. But it started with me learning to say no to stuff that I could do. I was capable of doing it, but I wasn't an expert. I wasn't great at it. I
yeah,
wasn't. It was draining for me. And like that's to your the title of your show, work should feel good. Like that's the thing that helps you navigate your career. Do less draining stuff, do more energizing stuff. If you just have
yes.
that as your navigation, you're going to get a better career.
Yeah. I think that's really important, and it can go down to a micro level. To me, it's always amazing how I've had people that say they're miserable in their jobs, and they're miserable, this is people that are not liking the work side, the right
Mhm.
work side in my model. And I will ask them, I'll kind of go through, like, what are you doing? And we'll find out that there's a thing that's like 5 or 10% of their entire workload that is dragging them completely down.
Mhm.
And when they finally get up the nerve to go and talk to their peers or their boss about it, they find that somebody else is dying to do that. They're wishing they had
Yes.
the they're wishing they had the opportunity to do that. And to me, a big thing I see is like that all boils down into a big bucket that people suck at, which is asking for help.
Yeah.
Um, to me, I think probably the most limiting thing that I did in my corporate career was that I was too accountable, which is hilarious because sometimes people that don't understand what accountability is will try to gaslight the, farther down on the food chain employee that says I have too much to do. They'll be like, "Well, you just need to be accountable." I can't There's
Mhm.
no accountability if you didn't sign up for the stuff. If you just shove it at
Yeah.
me, that's not accountability. That's bullshit is what it is. But
Mhm.
I had this weird idea that I was raised in this wrong view of accountability.
Mhm.
I was afraid of boundaries, and I was afraid that asking for help would mean that I was incompetent, not
Well,
that I
and
was.
to build
That's
on that point,
yeah,
you were trained that way in 20 years in school, because working
of
with somebody else
course.
in school is called cheating.
Yes.
Asking for help is cheating. And if
Yes.
you're a good student, as many of us on this podcast are, you're like, well, of course you don't learn to ask for help because you were told
Right.
for the
Well,
whole
and
school time.
you and I, you're a good solid Gen Xer just like me. I think you're maybe a couple years older than me, but we didn't do group projects very
No.
often. We definitely didn't do them in elementary school. I don't remember having a substantial number of group projects until I was in college. And I always was the one that ended up like I had teachers for parents. We make A's in our house.
Yep.
So I was definitely not good at
Group
like
projects.
pushing.
Group projects just mean I do all the work for 4 people instead of one, right?
Exactly,
That's what it
exactly.
means.
Yeah. So, and I like doing team stuff now, but I like working independently, and I like doing team things every so often, and it was
Mhm.
important for me to realize that because we throw around like one of the most toxic things in corporate America right now is everybody pretends that they want to collaborate on everything whenever some work isn't suited to that, and nobody actually knows what how collaboration actually means. Fun
Right.
fact, it's not setting up another site in SharePoint, and it's not making everybody sit in the same room. But yeah. So, but the
But
asking for help, we are conditioned to not do that.
and I want to say something else. Pick up on something else you said, which is really important, which is that sometimes the work, well, not sometimes, the work that we find draining, somebody else will find energizing.
Yes.
And that's when you say collaboration, that's the part I had never understood. Like I assumed everybody was like me. And everybody's
Yeah.
like thinks process and operation sucks. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't want to give the sucky work to somebody else. Like that's mean.
Right.
And then I met some people who
Yes.
like that was their like delight. They
Yeah.
loved nothing more than making long checklists and checking them off and take great glee in checking things off the list. And I'm just like, you're a space alien, but great. Like we could work together.
Yeah.
And like the best work in my career has come when I found somebody like that to work with, because then we could both do what we were good at. Like that's
Mm.
collaborations. We both get to spend more time on the stuff where we are energized. We have our own genius. Like that is what that is
Yes.
the pie
Yeah, it's one
expanding
of the reasons
collaboration.
why, like, I'm a Clifton Strengths nerd,
Hmm.
and it's one of the which probably saved my business, and, it helped me realize a lot of things about my business. I've been involved with that, like, my first exposure to it was over 15 years ago.
Hmm.
And then, I have used it with coaching some of my clients, and I had a gal that I worked with at my last corporate job that I was working on a career transition job search stuff with, and I had her take the test.
Hmm.
And she and I were close enough that she's like, "Okay, well, you've challenged me on this for, like, 3 sessions. I showed you yours, you show me mine." And I hadn't opened mine in a while, and I
Hmm.
opened it up, and I was like, "Oh." I knew 2 things. Number 1, why my last job ended up sucking because my good boss got replaced with a shitty boss. And
Hmm.
number 2, why my website for my business wasn't built.
Mm.
And it's because I am a strategic thinker. My
Hmm.
lowest like domain is execution. In Clifton Strengths, it's strategic thinking, relationship building, influence, and execution are the 4 domains. And there's 34 strengths that are sprinkled among those.
Hmm.
6 of my top 10 strengths were in strategic thinking. And
Mm. Yeah.
0 out of my top 10 were in execution. I'm like, "No wonder my website isn't done," because I knew I had the technical skill to do it, but I just didn't wanna do it.
Hmm. There's that hits
Oh.
home for me also because let me
Yeah.
tell you, my website has not been updated in 6 years. I keep saying like I'm
Oh.
gonna get to it, does not get to it.
I ended up hiring an offshore a Filipino-based VA agency that did my first website, and I've worked with them for 5.5 years. I wouldn't have a podcast if it wasn't for them. I
Hmm.
probably would have had to go back and get a real job if I would have tried trying to muscle through that myself. So we are getting really like we're at an hour, and I want to
Hmm.
respect your time. What I would love to know, like you have this big book in the back with the triangle. You have a choice. Y'all should read that. I definitely will finish reading it probably by the time this episode drops in a few weeks. if there is one change, and I don't just mean keeping the principles in mind because duh, we need to do that. But what is one of the most important tactical changes people have made to increase their impact that you could share with people?
I think it's being intentional about where your time goes, intentional prioritization.
Okay.
So you can do this. Like I learned to do this when I was at Google on a weekly level. Like on Monday morning, I would send my VP when I was chief of staff, here's a 3 to 5, well, let's say top priorities for the week. This is what I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would also say, like, what did I actually do last week? And
Mm-hmm.
that weekly accountability, that word again, of like, this
Yep.
is what I said I would do, this is what I actually did. This is what I said I would do, this is
Yep.
what I actually did. Like it made me like go, oh, when I don't do what I say I'm gonna do, like what got in the way? What kept me
Yes.
from doing it? And
Yeah.
it made me much more aware of like the ways I got derailed by projects or people pleasing or saying yes to things I shouldn't. So having that priority list in my head of like, this are the top 3 things. If I'm not working on those 3 things, I need to say no to other stuff because those things got to
Yep.
get done. So you can do it at the weekly level. I've also, if that's too long a feedback loop, daily works. You get up in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
you say, what is one thing that if I got it
One
done
thing.
today would mean the day was a success? Like I like
Yeah.
the simple version of that. Like today would be a success if I did this. Like if everything
X.
else would be bonus.
Yep.
Great. Now get it done. And if you don't get it done at the end of the day, you look back and like, what got in the way? How did I stop
Mm-hmm.
myself? What else was I doing that didn't get me to get to the one thing? Did
Yeah.
I bite off? Was it too big? Okay, I need to scope down for tomorrow.
Yep.
Try to do less.
Yep.
Did I say yes to other people? Whatever it is, we start to notice. Here's the obstacles. Here's how I'm not getting done what I intend to do. But if you
The
keep,
most important piece of that, too, I want people to really hear what he said, is checking back. Because you can put such and such is the top priority for the day. You can do that every day. But if you don't check it, like this podcast interview was actually my top priority for today. I didn't record it till
Mhm,
1:30, so I clearly did some other stuff today. But the whole going back and did I do it and why didn't I do it is huge. And I find that like weekly is really good. I make a list of like a bunch of different things that I could do for the week, but I highlight the few that have to get done, the things
mhm.
that are the most important priority. And then, I had a coaching client this morning bail and another business meeting bail because the person like had to go to the dentist and couldn't really talk by the time we were supposed to meet. And I knew exactly what to do next whenever that got moved, but it's that checking back and constantly having the rigor. And I've
Mhm,
dealt with autoimmune stuff too. So by knowing, well, if it happens in the week, that's good. If I know exactly why those things are at the top of the list so I can manage accordingly, that's good. And then I would match the work to my energy because I can't always
mhm.
match it to the calendar whenever you need a 2-hour nap in the afternoon. So, um,
Yeah.
well,
But
Eric, I'm gonna
wait, wait,
oh,
wait. I can I
go
respond to
ahead.
that, please? I
Yes,
think that's
please.
so incredibly valuable. Like not like I mean the illness part is tough, but like the prioritization is like my capacity can change from day to day and
Mhm.
hour to hour. And unless
Yep.
if you're not clear about what's most important, you're not going to get to it. Like it's like, oh, I'll do it later. Like no, you like I have limited capacity and I got to get to it in the time with the capacity that I have.
Yeah.
And uh, I often tell people like, you think that if you have more capacity, you'll get everything done. And that's just not true. I can tell you this because I was the chief of staff for the search ads team, which had basically infinite budget. And
Yeah.
we still had about 4 times the number of things we wanted to do that we actually got to. Because
Yeah.
when your capacity expands, your desires expand. You say you want to do more.
Mhm.
So people that say like, well, I'm like overworked now, but like I'll be fine when I get more capacity. It's just not
It'll
true.
be fine in
So
January. No, it won't.
no, it won't. And until you learn to like do this kind of intentional prioritization of saying this is most important, it's not
Yes.
going to change. But if you start doing the most important thing first, really using your time and capacity to impactful stuff, how you make a difference.
Yeah, there's a
So,
couple other things I can quickly add to that too. And then I'm going to go into like a lightning-ish round, like a couple
okay.
things I ask everybody. But it's okay if joy is the most important thing that you're going to do that day.
Yes,
It really, really
absolutely.
is. Especially if you're taking a half day off, like in particular. Like my goal is to enjoy my half day. The most important thing I'm going to do is enjoy my half day. The number two
Hmm.
thing is that I got to get this report out or go to the status meeting or what the hell ever. But
Yeah.
you get to be on your own fucking list. Like
Yes.
your needs
Yes.
get to be on your own freaking list. Another thing is if you're feeling drained by your work and you go back and think about your highest priority and how you feel about them, if you consistently have as the top 1 to 3, one for the day or like 3 to 5 for the week, things that you don't enjoy doing or things that you have to work on with people that just you don't gel with for some reason, that is a
Hmm.
signal that something is systemically wrong with your business. You need to look for ways to shift that, whether that is reallocating the work, whether that is finding a new job, whether that is a transfer. But if your top priorities are things you don't like, you have to make a change eventually because just prioritizing does not create the kind of magic that Eric wants to help create for you and that I want to help create for you. So, anyway, that's my
Yeah.
sermon.
No, I appreciate that. And like, I want to just reiterate what you said, that sometimes rest or joy is the most important thing. Cause I would
Yeah.
find myself like, say like, oh, I'm going to take this time off, but then I'd be so stressed by like all the things I wasn't doing that I didn't actually get any of the benefit of recharging. And it's like, well,
Yes. I
that's
have
not
been
helpful.
there. I have
Um,
definitely been there. And it's
and
really
well,
rough.
yeah, it is rough. Um, and then one last personal anecdote, like this idea of deciding what's most important applies to like how we measure our lives too.
Yeah.
So, I'm Search Ads chief of staff for over 6 years. I'm on the way up. My VP is about to get promoted to running all of ads. So he's going to be, instead of running a 2,000 person org, he's going to run like a 15,000 person org. And I'm his chief of staff. And that's when I quit and go start a coaching business. So I'm about to have more responsibility, more impact, more scope, more money than I've ever had before. And I walked away. And people are like, why would you do that? And the
I
answer
didn't
was,
want
I had
it.
a kid. I had a
Yeah.
kid. And, and I was like, I would not be able to do that job and be around for my
You
kids.
can't be the dad that you want to be. So, no,
And
that's a really great example. Um, for sure. So, I'm going to go to a couple questions that I ask everybody and then
yep.
we'll close. So what is the worst piece of career advice you have personally ever received?
It's probably something along the lines of pay your dues. Like you're miserable now, but it'll get better later.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's true, and sometimes you're just miserable. Uh, so like,
Yeah.
what I tell people is like, people think like, oh, if it's hard, it must be good for me. It's like, well, there's hard of
I mean,
learning something
leg day
new.
is good for you, but
Yeah. So like, there's hard where you're learning, you're growing, you're like pushing yourself against your limitations. That's a good kind of hard. The hard
mhm,
where you're beating your head into the wall, not so good.
yeah.
Make sure it's the right kind of hard. Make sure that when you're pushing
Understanding why
hard,
it's hard really is important. I think that's a really great message. What are you paying your dues for? If it's that like one thing that drives me crazy is when people say you have to earn your way to do strategic work. And I'm not talking about like this chief of staff for 2,000 people. I'm talking
mhm,
about they're taking someone that's 26 years old and giving them buttons to press and telling them they haven't earned the right to do strategy. It's like, well, I
yeah,
suck at tactics. So am I just supposed to suck at tactics and never get promoted or what's the deal? So
yep,
understanding exactly why something feels hard is really important. What
yep.
is a personal habit that has helped you be really successful?
Ooh, what's a personal habit? I guess I will say self-reflection. So I've been
Mhm.
writing, journaling, or writing in for a long time, and when I don't like, I guess maybe it's curiosity more than that. It's like, what
Yeah.
the heck is going on here? Like when
Yeah.
the company went bankrupt, I'm like, I don't understand what happened. Like this
Mm,
bugs me. I cannot put the picture together what happened here. And
yeah.
that led to then, like I said, going to get this degree and ending up on the business side and this chief of staff role. Like all that came from that question, like, what the heck is going on here? And a lot of my work as a coach now is like, this person is very confident. I work with a lot of high achievers, done great things in their career, and they're stuck. And there's something stopping them. They're getting in their own way somehow. I'm like, what is going on here? Like that curiosity, both about myself and others. I think that's pretty much the
I love
habit of like,
that.
what, I think here's one more tip I'll share. Um, People in general are not stupid or evil. They're not trying to be ignorant. They're not trying to be evil. If they're doing something, there is a good reason for it in their world. So if you
Yes.
don't understand what they're doing, the question I ask myself is like, what must be true in their world that would explain their behavior? Because there's something that's true for them that's not true for me, and that's why I'm not
Mhm.
seeing it. But if I can figure out what is true in their world, then we can have a conversation.
I think that's really important, especially in the polarized age that we live in. If you can
Yes.
think through that, you might not change anybody's mind, but at least you can have a clear conscience that you tried to understand a little bit instead of
Hmm.
just jerking knees all the time.
Yep.
My last question before we go is, what is something that you have changed your mind about fairly recently?
Uh, I think the big realization of my last year was that effort doesn't matter as much as I think it does. Um, so like I've always been a hard worker. I want to like try really hard and like push really hard. And last year we had our third kid about a year ago. And so I took a bunch of parental leave last year. So I
Mhm.
wasn't working and I intentionally like shut things off, wasn't working on the business, wasn't marketing. And I'm like, oh my
Nothing.
God, this is gonna be catastrophic for my business. And it wasn't. It was fine. I mean, I lost a little bit of revenue, but I also took 3 months off. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's expected. And it's like,
Yeah.
wait. So I've been stressing and working and like tearing my hair out, and it doesn't really make that much difference.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It is. It's interesting how often that's true. I heard a runner's analogy for that one time.
Hmm.
I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was John Acuff. I'm not sure, but I read it in one of the zillion books that I read. And the person
Hmm.
talked about how they were a runner and they had a certain pace that they would consistently hit and they decided they wanted to do better. So they really
Hmm.
went out and they pushed themselves and they were miserable at the end of the run and it only saved like 10 seconds or something off of their pace. And so they
Hmm.
just decided I don't need to do it. Like I hate running whenever I run that way. So I'm going to run, the 10-second slower pace. And there's such power in making that decision. Well, Eric, thank you so much for
Wait.
coming.
I
Yeah.
think I know the
Oh,
story
you
you're talking
always have
about.
a thing to say. Go for it.
Sorry.
No, you're
I think
fine.
it's a Derek Sivers story.
Is it a Derek
Um,
Sivers story? Okay. I
if
could
that's an author you've read, I'll send it. I'll send
I
you the
have
link.
read
It's because
I
it's
have read him.
yeah,
But
it's one of my favorite
it could have
stories
been
because it.
I yes, but, you have an encyclopedic knowledge of all the books. You're the person I'm gonna go to from now on when I need a book suggestion because you have all of them. But it's a really important thing. It's like when the pushing gets you to where you're miserable for a tiny return, like, there is no point in that. None at all.
Yes.
So, thank you so much for coming on Work Should Feel Good. I was delighted to talk to you. I knew I wanted to talk to you the minute I heard the title of your book, and you did not disappoint. So, everybody, thanks so much, and I will see you guys next time.
Thank you, Diane.